Christmas is supposed to be a time of warmth, family, and cheer. But for some, it's a night they'll never forget for all the wrong reasons. This story begins with Sarah, a young woman in her late 20s who was looking forward to a quiet Christmas Eve with her family in their remote mountain cabin. After months of planning, everything was set. The fire crackling, the tree glowing, the smell of fresh pine filling the air. She thought it would be the perfect holiday retreat with her boyfriend, Alex, and her best friend, Jenny. But things quickly took a turn for the worse. It all started when Sarah's little brother, Ethan, found a strange package under the tree, nothing like the others. It was old, wrapped in faded brown paper with no name attached. At first, they thought it was a mix-up, maybe even a joke. But the unsettling chill that spread through the cabin when they opened it was impossible to ignore. Inside was an old, tarnished ornament, strange, almost sinister in design. It looked like a twisted version of an angel, with glass eyes that seemed to stare right at them. When Sarah went to hang it on the tree, the lights flickered and the temperature dropped. Her breath became visible in the air, despite the fire still blazing in the fireplace. And then, the sounds began, faint, whispering voices from the darkness. Before they knew it, the house had become a prison, and something dark was waiting for them to uncover the secrets behind the ornament, secrets that could change their Christmas forever. Stay tuned, because this is one Christmas story you won't want to miss. Sarah's hand trembled as she hung the eerie ornament on the tree, the cold glass sending a shiver up her spine. She tried to brush it off as nothing, just a weird coincidence. But as the ornament settled into place, the air around her felt thicker, colder. Her breath clouded, and the sound of the crackling fire seemed to fade, replaced by an unsettling silence. Alex was the first to break it. "Did anyone else feel that?" he asked, his voice low. "It's freezing in here now." Jenny, who had been sitting by the fire with Ethan, glanced up from her phone, her face pale. "It's like the room just shifted." Sarah tried to smile, brushing off her unease. "Maybe the heater's broken." But even as she spoke, she noticed the odd shift in her brother's behavior. Ethan was no longer playing with his toys by the tree. Instead, he was standing in the corner, staring at the ornament with wide eyes. His lips were moving, but there was no sound. "Ethan?" Sarah called out gently, her voice laced with concern. "What's wrong, buddy?" Ethan didn't respond. His eyes never left the ornament, but the way his face twisted into a blank, expressionless stare made Sarah's heart race. "Hey, little man, snap out of it." But before he could touch him, Ethan jerked back violently, letting out a strange, guttural sound, like something ancient and primal. The room grew even colder, and the lights flickered once more. A voice, faint but chilling, echoed from somewhere deep in the house, "It's too late now." And that's when they heard it, the sound of footsteps coming from the attic. Slow, heavy, and they weren't alone. The footsteps from the attic grew louder, closer, each step resonating with a bone-chilling heaviness. Alex stood frozen, staring at the ceiling, his face paling. Sarah could feel the blood drain from her face as her eyes flickered nervously between Ethan, who was still in a trance, and the attic door, which was now ajar, creaking with every slow movement of whatever was inside. "What the hell is that?" Jenny whispered, clutching her phone like a lifeline, but even the light from the screen seemed to be swallowed by the growing darkness. Alex stood up, his voice trembling as he tried to keep the panic at bay. "It's probably the wind. Maybe the house is just old," but the words didn't convince anyone, least of all Sarah. The house was cold, too cold for the season. And the voices, she could still hear them, faint whispers coming from somewhere, swirling around them like an invisible presence. "We have to check the attic," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jenny shook her head. "No. That's how horror stories start. People go into attics and they don't come back." But Sarah's mind was already made up. They couldn't just wait. Whatever was happening, it was happening now. They crept toward the stairs, their footsteps soft against the creaky floorboards. As Sarah approached the attic door, her heart pounded in her chest, every instinct telling her to turn back. But Ethan was still staring at the ornament, his lips moving in some silent chant, like he was summoning something. The footsteps had stopped, but the air felt charged, as if it was holding its breath. And then, just as Sarah reached for the handle, a sharp, blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. It was Jenny. She had turned to look at Ethan, and something in his eyes had changed. "We have to leave. Now." Jenny's scream echoed through the cabin, sharp and high-pitched, sending a jolt of fear straight into Sarah's spine. Sarah whipped around to find Jenny frozen in place, eyes wide with terror. Her gaze was fixed not on the ornament this time, but on Ethan, who was no longer just standing there. Ethan's body was stiff, like a puppet controlled by invisible strings. His eyes, those wide, terrified eyes, were now entirely black, no whites visible. His lips were still moving, but no sound came out. It was as if he was speaking to something that wasn't there. "Ethan?" Sarah's voice trembled as she stepped toward him. But as she got closer, the temperature dropped even further. The air felt thick, heavy, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Behind her, Alex pulled Jenny away, his eyes wide with panic. "We need to get out of here. Now." But Sarah couldn't move. Her legs felt like they were made of stone, rooted to the floor as Ethan's strange mutterings grew louder, more frantic. The whispers, those same eerie voices from the walls, had become a chorus, filling the room with a growing, unsettling hum. Then, just as quickly as it started, everything went still. Ethan stopped muttering. His eyes blinked back to normal, the blackness fading from his pupils. He looked up at Sarah, his face expressionless. "Sarah," his voice came out in a soft, strained whisper. "You should have never opened it." Before she could respond, the attic door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The sound of something or someone scraping against the floor above them sent a chill through the entire cabin. Something was coming, and this time it wasn't going to wait. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. There was no escaping now. The door to the attic remained shut, but the scraping sound above them grew louder, more frantic. It was like something or someone was desperately trying to claw its way down. Sarah's heart raced as she gripped the stair railing, the cold seeping into her skin. "We need to get out of here," Alex repeated, his voice more insistent this time, but Sarah couldn't tear her eyes away from Ethan. His gaze was still locked on the ornament, his face now pale, drained of all color. "What is it?" Jenny asked, voice trembling. "What's happening to him?" Ethan slowly turned to face them, his expression empty, as if he didn't recognize them at all. "It's not him anymore," he whispered, barely audible. "He's already gone." The room seemed to spin, Sarah's breath coming in shallow gasps. This wasn't her brother anymore. Something had taken him, and whatever it wasn't finished. Before anyone could react, Ethan lurched toward the door, his movements jerky and unnatural. Sarah reached out to stop him, but the moment her hand touched his arm, a shocking jolt of ice coursed through her body. She gasped, recoiling, as the ground beneath them trembled again. The house groaned, the walls shaking violently. The lights flickered, and suddenly everything went dark. For a moment, there was only the sound of their panicked breaths. Then, the whispering voices returned, louder than ever, filling every corner of the room. The air grew so thick with dread that it felt suffocating. And then, from the attic, a voice, low and guttural, spoke clearly for the first time. "You shouldn't have opened it." The realization hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. The ornament wasn't just a curse, it was a door. And whatever had been waiting on the other side was now ready to claim them. The voice from the attic, deep and chilling, echoed through the cabin. "You shouldn't have opened it." The words seemed to reverberate in Sarah's skull, making her dizzy with terror. She wanted to run, to grab Alex and Jenny and leave this cursed place, but her feet wouldn't move. It was as if the very air around them had thickened, holding them in place. Ethan, no, whatever he was now, stood motionless by the door, his head tilting in a way that was utterly unnatural. His body was still, but his eyes were wide with a blank emptiness that made Sarah's blood run cold. Alex stepped forward, his voice shaky but determined. "We have to destroy it. Now." Without waiting for a response, he grabbed the ornament from the tree, holding it in his hands like a weapon. It was heavier than it looked, as though it were made of something more solid, more ancient than glass. The moment Alex touched the ornament, a shrill scream pierced the air, sending them all stumbling backward. The walls of the cabin cracked, and the floor beneath them groaned in agony. The air felt alive, suffocating, pressing against their chests. With trembling hands, Alex smashed the ornament onto the floor, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. The room went silent, the oppressive weight lifting from the air. But then it happened. Ethan, who had been standing still, suddenly jerked forward. His mouth opened, not with his own voice, but with a guttural, inhuman growl. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "You've only just begun." As the room around them began to tremble once more, Sarah realized with horror destroying the ornament hadn't ended the curse. It had released it. And now it was coming for them. The growl echoed in their ears, filling the cabin with a darkness that swallowed the light. Ethan's body convulsed violently, and his eyes, those hollow, black eyes, stared straight through Sarah. She backed away, heart pounding in her chest. The walls creaked, groaned, and then, just as suddenly, everything went silent again. Alex, still holding the shattered pieces of the ornament in his hand, looked around in confusion. "What's happening?" he whispered, his voice trembling. It was then that Sarah noticed it. The room had changed. The familiar walls of the cabin were gone, replaced by something far darker, something ancient. The floor beneath them seemed to shift, the shadows dancing as if alive. The cabin wasn't just cursed. It was alive. The voice returned, this time from everywhere at once. "You cannot escape." In that instant, Sarah knew what they had to do. "We have to leave," she said, voice shaky but determined. "We have to get out now." The three of them rushed toward the door, but it slammed shut before they could reach it. Desperation surged through Sarah. She turned to the window. It too was sealed, the once crystal-clear glass now a foggy barrier. Ethan, still standing, his movements stiff and unnatural, suddenly fell silent. His body twitched violently one last time, then went completely still. It was as if whatever force had taken him was now gone, perhaps satisfied with its game. A final whisper filled the air. "Merry Christmas." Then, with a shudder, the cabin collapsed into nothingness. The world around them shattered, and the ground beneath them crumbled away, sending them spiraling into darkness. When Sarah awoke, she was alone back in her own bed. Had it all been a dream? The broken pieces of the ornament lay on her nightstand, as though mocking her. Did you enjoy this spine-chilling Christmas horror story? Let us know in the comments what kinds of stories you'd like to hear next. Haunted holidays? Creepy family gatherings? Drop your ideas and we'll bring them to life.